Hi, my name is Jenny Devonshire and welcome to the Pause2Perform podcast, where we talk about all things relating to wellness, what you should take a pause for in your day to optimise your mental and physical health and perform at your peak. So this week I'm very excited. We're joined by Dr. Sonia Panchal. She is a consultant rheumatologist, integrative and functional medical practitioner, and she's also a transformational and empowerment coach whose passion and interest is in health optimization for people to live in true vitality. So welcome to the podcast, Sonia.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for the invitation.
So I thought we could start off you could just tell all the listeners just a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
So, as you said in your introduction, I'm a consultant rheumatologist and I have been for many years. But I more recently, over the past few years, have been engaging in my interests in functional and integrative medicine. And often when I say that, people are like, what does that mean? So for those that know, it's great. But for those that don't, if I may, I'll take a couple of minutes just to explain that. So functional medicine really is about taking health beyond the kind of sick care aspect. So currently, a lot of healthcare or deemed healthcare is presenting with a symptom and then having a solution, often with a medication. What functional medicine does is really get to the root cause of the symptom in the first place. So the way I describe it is we're going upstream to determine where it may have started, which could be due to a multitude of things, for example, environment, nutrition, exercise, those kind of things. And we look at those aspects and understand, is there something there that could be optimized or looked at to mitigate the downstream effects of the symptoms that you present with. So we're really talking about root cause, and the integrative aspect of it is putting the two together. So in certain circumstances, there are instances where medications are absolutely life-saving and necessary. And so we don't want to completely rule those out, but we want to use them in the appropriate setting for the appropriate condition for the appropriate patient. And so the integrative aspect is bringing the blend of the two together to really have health optimization and understand what it is to be healthy, which isn't always just the absence of dis-ease.
Great. And what made you particularly interested in functional and integrative medicine?
That's such a great question because I often ponder on this. For years, I've been managing patients with inflammatory and autoimmune conditions because that's really the nature of rheumatology. And I always found that it was great when, people were getting better, but a lot of people were not always getting better with the medications. And that's not just because of the medications. It could be a variety of reasons. But I always wondered that we're never really looking at why they've got it in the first place. And that's what really engaged my interest to look into it further, because I was like, if we can work out why they're inflamed in the first place, then surely we won't need to use some of the very powerful drugs that we have to use. And that's where the interest stemmed from. And as we know in research and in the medical world, inflammation is not just in rheumatology. It's anywhere and everywhere, and it crosses lots of specialties. And that again took me out of the mindset of thinking of disease just in specialties, and so not just in cardiology or just in rheumatology. We are a whole being, we're a whole person, and that took me down the whole route of holistic or holistic care, and look at the person as a whole. And I've always done that in my practice, but I probably didn't always approach it with all those other aspects. Just I would concentrate mainly on the symptoms due to my training. But since delving into the whole holistic aspect and exploring those avenues as well, it really fulfills me. Patients are very engaging when they realize that there's so many other aspects, and they feel very empowered when they know they can do something about it. And that then led me on to the coaching aspect as well, because there's such a connection between the mind and the body, and a lot of dis-ease in the body can actually stem from the mind and the thoughts and the perceptions that we have and the experiences that we may be holding on to from past experiences, and potentially traumas. That really just made it full circle for me to bring that aspect to my practice as well, which quite honestly has been, life-changing for some people. And I've had amazing results where patients who may have come to me with pain or or something that they've had for many years and medications and things haven't worked, there's no kind of structural problem. When we go deep into themselves and deep into their mind, that we can dissolve a lot of that, and as a consequence the pain dissipates literally in the room in front of them, which is fascinating. It doesn't happen for everyone. I'm not saying that's going to fix everybody, but essentially what I'm saying is when you approach it from those angles and put the whole system together, you can really start to dissolve dis-ease in the body and bring people back to balance, which then effectively gives them true health.
It's amazing. It must be so rewarding when you get those kind of success stories. Like, in general, how open are people that come to you to go down this kind of the more holistic route rather than the medication route?
Yeah, I think the tide has turned quite a lot recently, but I suspect due to the pandemic, but also people, there's vast knowledge out there. There's lots of ability to find information for yourself. And people have now got a much more curious mind around health, because they appreciate literally that health is wealth. Without your health, you're not going to have anything really. But I think as I have kind of explored this more and more, I probably emit a certain energy and vibration, which then naturally attracts those patients to me. So I've noticed that a lot of patients that come to me are very open to this form of medicine. They're certainly open-minded enough to explore it. And I suspect, like I say, it may be a consequence of who I am and the way I practice that I attract them. But I do feel more and more people are starting to want to know more about it. And I think from my perspective, as a clinician, as a physician, as a doctor, it's not my job to fix people. I work in collaboration with people, and my real purpose is to empower people to then take care of their own health. And that's the bit that's really fulfilling for me.
Oh, that's amazing. So are there there might not be, but are there any like common causes of ill health that you see time and again?
Yeah, I think that's a very broad question in the sense that there's lots of things that cause ill health. I tend to approach it from a mind, body, soul, spirit aspect. But in my line of work as a rheumatologist, the majority of things I see are related to inflammation, chronic inflammation, or autoimmune. And what I mean by autoimmune is when essentially your body starts turning on itself for various reasons. I think inflammation is a big driver for all sorts of ill health, not just specific to certain areas of the body. I think it's more you've got inflammation as the process, and then it affects different areas. And inflammation, stems from all sorts of things like your gut health, the environment, epigenetics, whether you smoke, or the pollutants around you, whether you've had previous viruses, but equally more if you've had stress in the body, or if your nervous system is in fight, flight, freeze on a constant level. This all has a huge impact on your body. So from my experience, I see a lot of inflammation, and I would assert that is a very common cause of disease in the body.
And have you seen more of this in sort of over the years since you've been in practice?
Yeah, I suppose I have seen a lot more of this, but then equally, I'm probably, because I'm sitting in a niche where I'm normally seeing patients with inflammation, I'm probably a little bit skewed in terms of the numbers that I see, because they naturally are referred to me. But I think generally as a whole, you don't have to be a physician to know this, lifestyle, the way that we are at the moment, very fast paced, very sedentary. We're living longer, but our health span and lifespan are different. So what I mean by that, you've got a lifespan of say 80, but your health span is only 60. You live healthy for 60 years, but the 60 to the 80 is suffering dis-ease. What we're trying to do is get health span and lifespan together so that people have good quality of life, but we don't really see that. So I think as a consequence of that, and the aging population, the vast population, the lifestyle, these are all contributing factors as to why we're seeing more and more ill health. And until things change from the kind of wider perspective, we're probably going to continue to see more and more, despite the efforts of society.
Yeah, definitely. So you said before about people, it's important for people to take control of their own health. And I totally agree with that. So how do you empower people to do it for themselves and to feel like they have the control?
Well, I think firstly, I'm certainly not here to tell people what to do. Everybody has their own responsibility and ownership of their own health. My approach really is to first give them awareness, because sometimes we don't really know why we're not well. We can appreciate that it could be due to something or it's due to a symptom, but they may not appreciate where it comes from. And what I tend to do first and foremost is just give them that kind of cascade of events that could explain why they've got. And that awareness in itself, people get epiphanies or are more kind of, open to thinking, goodness me, I hadn't realized that this is the consequence of why I've got this. So connecting those dots makes a real difference. So that in itself can really start to switch patients to thinking, or people to thinking, wow, I can do something about this. And they sometimes can be quite simple changes as well. They don't have to be like completely change your lifestyle. And then it's then digging deep and diving deep into those components, where then patients can go off and do their own research, and they find that they just get more and more involved in that. And so as a consequence, they get empowered. I think the most transformative I get is when they realize what the mind is doing and what the thoughts and the perceptions that they have impacting their body more so than any of the other things. And when they make that aware, make those connections, then people really feel empowered, because they're like, I can create this, for example, dis-ease, subconsciously, not consciously. So complete love and compassion for people, no judgment whatsoever. Then equally, if I can create that, then I can also create good health with a few changes in perceptions, dissolving thought processes and things like that then make a huge difference, which then ultimately will impact your diet and your lifestyle and your sleep and your exercise and your stress levels, and it has a kind of knock-on effect to everything. And so it's like when you're trying to lose weight. I don't know if you can resonate, but if you lose a little bit, it then perpetuates and you feel really good and you want to carry on. So it's a bit like that. You give them a little bit of a nugget or awareness, and then they start going, oh, I can see improvements, and then people carry on, which is very fulfilling, because like I said to you, I'm not here to tell people what to do. I really want to have collaborative relationships with the people that come to me to really empower them to take control of their own life.
Yeah, it's like very similar, like within like fitness and stuff. It's like if you start just exercising, then because you've exercised, you want to eat better. And then because of that, it's all, you change one of those things, and it really helps like get the momentum, doesn't it, to start making further changes. And then you just start feeling better and better. Yeah. But it's just like that initial getting started that can be the challenge.
It's like pushing something up a hill. That initial push is the hardest, but once you get momentum, it just keeps going, and that's really what we're doing.
So I feel like now we are in a time of almost information overload. There's got the internet, and we know kind of what we should be doing, but for some various reasons, people have barriers to change. And I just wondered, are there any kind of barriers that you see time and again? And if so, what are some sort of strategies that listeners might be able to use to help to start making these positive changes in their lives?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I would go very upstream. So I'm going to actually pull on the coaching side for this, because it's like you alluded to with fitness. We all know eat less, move more, and sustain a healthy weight. Yet majority of people know that, yet that doesn't always happen. So there's something in the way, and that's very similar for health as well. And it's not necessarily because they eat unhealthily or don't exercise or don't have good sleep or are not stressed. It's not always just those components. I would assert that a lot of it stems from the mind and the thoughts. For example, if people have had significant traumas or even small traumas, and they've created coping mechanisms, behaviors or patterns, they then become the patterns that they engage with all the time, that often is on a subconscious level. And so they know the knowledge, they know what to do, but this subconscious pattern keeps running itself, which people are not aware of. And that really stems up in the mind. And then that becomes that disconnect between the mind and the body. So if the mind is creating one thing, it then spills out into the body and manifests as symptoms. And so when people know a lot and they're not being able to or should be doing something and they're not, I would invite people to start looking at what are the patterns and behaviors that might be in the way of that. And that's where my coaching really helps. We identify those, look at where they came from, dissolve them, because often people find that they're not what they really think that they were. So that's always a bit of an epiphany for people, and a lightness that they get, which then allows them, with the information overload that they've got, to decide which avenue they want to go down and explore. So I would assert that it's more in the mind to start with, rather than I know everything but I'm not doing anything. Then I would say that we would need to go upstream and look at that.
Yeah, because I think like a lot of times what we're doing is also our brain's like trying to protect us. Like that's why we do things. I know, like, you know, with procrastination, it's because you've got like fear, or it's trying to stop you from like potentially failing or what have you, like that. So it's like you say, it is very much like having to delve into the why and uncovering that to help you move towards making the change, rather than just trying to change and then just not really getting anywhere or going back to where you were before after a short period.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to speak to that a little more, I mean, our bodies and our, let's call it, you know, the ego is there for allow us to survive. Its main goal is for survival. So it will do whatever it takes to ensure that we survive. But actually, where we really thrive is when we kind of drop into the heart space, into the soul, and really go true to who we are. And often it's the ego that's bringing out these patterns and behaviors to keep us alive and survive. But actually, it then does not allow us to get to where we really want to be, because it's kind of getting in the way. And what we do is look at that, understand how it serves you, because it will be serving you in the moment or in that time. But then how can we reframe that so that it doesn't keep getting in the way and doesn't allow you to really get to who you truly are? And I always speak to this about the body, just to bring it back to health, is that a lot of people go, oh, there's something wrong with me. There's something, you know, I've got this symptom, I've got this, I've got that. And actually what I say is that the body, it's the most amazing piece of kit machinery that that is on this planet. And everything that the body does is in response to something, and it's always functioning in your best interest. So even when you have dis-ease or you're out of balance, your body is feeding back through its symptoms to tell you that it's in dis-ease or it's out of balance. And often what we find is that people aren't always connected to their bodies, or not listening to their bodies. And then that just continues because the body can't help itself without the mind being connected to it. So that's probably quite a long-winded answer, but I think that's where the body and the mind are really, really need to, work together. And I'm seeing such a disconnect. And when we reconnect, we really do see people feeling better.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've got a yoga teacher that I used to go to, and she was always talking about pain and how it's your body's trying to tell you something. And the problem is we choose not to listen. So we keep going and going. But actually, if you sort of step back, and it's funny because she happened to do a post the other day about how she was realized she wanted to be a performer, and she started getting elbow pain. And it was until she kind of went into it and realized that she had fear around it, about not being entitled to do that, all these things. And she said as soon as she worked on that side of herself, the pain went away, because it wasn't just a physical thing. And it's just, it just goes to show how important the mind is. And as on that, how would you help someone if they weren't sort of tuned into their body? They are just very much in their head. Are there any sort of simple techniques you would try with them?
Well, a couple of things that I ask people to do is often, for example, inflammation. I see lots of people with inflammation. They come in with joint pains and swellings and all sorts of things. Now, obviously, they might need something to help alleviate the symptoms in the short term. But I do ask people to go, one of my favorite questions is always like, well, what's going on in life at the moment? And because often people don't ask that question, people just have that kind of permission. You can see their shoulders drop and they think, I can actually explain what's going on in my life and be listened to in a safe space with a trusting person. And often so much just comes out in that first initial answer to the question that you can already, and when they listen to it themselves as they're speaking, they go, God, there's so much going on. And so I often say to people, if you feel like you're suppressing something and you're not letting it out, then we need to give you firstly the permission to let you release that. Because often a lot of people feel like they can't say something or they don't want to show it. And that in itself is suppressing, but the body holds on to that subconsciously. The body still remembers everything. So the first couple of techniques, I was like, slow down and get kind of back to center. So whether that be through meditation, through mindfulness techniques, and there are so many things out there that you can do. My favorite is breath work, and I do breath work with my patients. I can see patients when they come in, shoulders up to their ears, and they're talking really fast because they want to tell me everything. And I just ask them to take 3 deep breaths with me. And then we start, and they're like, oh, I feel so much better. We haven't done anything. We've just done some breaths. So I invite people to do some breath work. And then for people that are really struggling and just don't know how to let go, because some people are so used to it, it's become so innate in their, in their being that, sometimes writing on a piece of paper and just whatever comes up, just write on a piece of paper, scream, shout, dance, whatever it is that you want to do, just release some of that, whatever's going on for you, and catch yourself. If you do catch yourself and you think, oh, I'm feeling a bit, then take that time for yourself as best you can. The self-care practice is probably the most important practice out of everything that I talk about. Then you can obviously dive deeper and go through, go back into their kind of past and see where things have arisen from and start dissolving some of that. But I think the first thing is really to get grounded and just get back to yourself and allow your nervous system to kind of go back to what we call parasympathetic, which is the digest, rest, relaxation state, just to then listen and hear what your body's saying to you. And then you can take it from there. I mean, it sounds simple. It's not simple. And I say that with the greatest compassion because, I've been there and I know how difficult it can be. But it was when I started doing some self-care practices that I really started to kind of get to what it is that was causing what was happening for me at the time. So, which is pretty much stress driven. And then you can start from that place.
Yeah. I mean, I know from just on what you're saying about people realizing that was what's going on, because I've had that myself. I think because you're so used to coping with things, you think that that's like just normal and there's no big deal. And yeah, it's only when you take the time to actually explain to other people like what's going on, what you've been doing, and you think, oh, actually, yeah, that is quite a lot, because you just take it for granted because it's your situation. And also back onto your comment about the rest and recuperation. I know personally, I find that really difficult. Like even when you're sort of relaxing, you're doing things like you're on your phone or you're watching TV and what have you. And I know recently I used to always do my foam rolling and stretching before bed. Like I turn devices off at 9, but I was like, right, from 8, I'm actually going to turn it off. And I started doing putting my yoga music on. I've got a red light, so I have that on, and I do my foam rolling and stretching. Oh, and I do my Brahmi breath as well, because I love that one. And my sleep was so much better. My HRV score went up, and I was like, "This is so nice." And then some days I just have part of me, it's like, "Oh no, I don't want to." And I think, "Why don't I want to?" It's like this is really good for me. And but yeah, sometimes it just seems, I don't know why you feel like you shouldn't do it. But yeah, you have to kind of question why don't I want to do something that's going to be really beneficial for me.
Well, 2 things to that point. I would assert that there might be something there that still hasn't yet to be discovered and dissolved, because there's some resistance there for some reason. And then to the second point about, when you do finally relax, it feels so good. I mean, if we take, for example, people that retire, or when you go on holiday, that moment that you rest, you feel like, oh my goodness, then all this stuff comes out. It's because your body finally has had a chance to kind of go, oh, I can relax and release. And so we see a lot of people in retirement, they work. They're constantly in the kind of chronic stress, and then they retire, and then all this illness comes out because the body is finally kind of just gone, I can't do it anymore. I'm just going to relax. And then it all just manifests through the body and the symptoms arise. And I speak to that with personal experience in my family. So I totally resonate with that. But for people that, that are doing self-care practices or things that feel good and then find themselves not doing it, I invite them to go deeper, because there will be something there that's causing resistance. And it's that resistance that's probably driving a lot of those behaviors. Until you really understand and really get to the resistance and understand what's underneath that, you might find that you end up doing this back and forth, and you're not really making any progress as such. And again, people aren't always aware of that. You don't know what you don't know. And so the benefit of speaking to people, your practitioner, a coach, whoever it might be, can really identify your blind spots and then help you navigate that going forward. Yeah.
So obviously it's going to be individual, but what does your process of working look like? Is there a general flow that it follows? Maybe you could just tell the listeners a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. I think it depends how someone presents to me. If they come down the coaching route, then obviously we're going to go down the coaching route, and then if health comes up, which often it will, then we'll delve into that as well. If they come through the kind of the usual conventional route, then we'll deal with the symptoms, and then that often then leads into the mind and then into the functional side if they're open to that. And then obviously if they come through the functional route, then we open up the functional side, which then might open up the mind side as well, because like I said from the beginning, it's mind, body, soul, spirit connection. So it doesn't matter which route they come through, things will overlap, because that's my area of expertise as well. So I'm going to bring that to my practice. But it from a health perspective, people come with symptoms. We'd want to investigate that, make sure there's no structural problem or something that needs absolute dealing with, from an acute aspect or from a medication or therapeutic perspective, if it's required and necessary, because I'm not going to just give drugs for the sake of it. Then we'd look into the kind of go back into their history, depending on what their symptoms are. I often can go straight back to even childhood, as a baby, in the womb, mother's health. Sometimes we look as far back as that to ascertain the timeline of events, to see why they've got what they've got in this moment in time. Then if they need any functional testings, that might happen. If the coaching aspect needs to be, incorporated, then that's incorporated. So there's no kind of set rules, as you alluded to. It's very personalized to the individual, but I draw on lots of different aspects to bring true health to that patient and enable them to see, more importantly, where things are coming from. And then it's obviously up to the patient, up to the individual, how they wish to pursue those routes. But the recommendations are there, and we look at the whole body system.
Yeah, I think Ayurvedic medicine looks at quite a lot about what's been going on with the mother while she was pregnant. And I think there was a study, I can't remember. I think it was about diet though. And was it grandparents affected the
there's so many links between the generations. Yeah, there's lots of links with the generations. The Ayurveda stuff is something that I'm exploring myself now. I've just been to Mumbai and was looking at the Ayurveda for myself, and that speaks very much to what I've spoken to about balance and imbalance. Because all that's happening when you're in dis-ease is you're out of balance, and we want to bring your body back to balance. Now, I can speak to a little bit about Ayurveda, but I'm not a fully fledged practitioner in that area as yet. But it's certainly something that interests me, because their philosophy is very much the same as what holistic functional medicine is. It's about identifying where you're out of balance, get you back to balance, which is your true essence and your true vitality, and then optimizing all those parts. Because like I said at the beginning, health is not just the absence of dis-ease. You can have no dis-ease but still not necessarily be of true health. And so what we're doing is we're trying to understand where is it where you're really truly healthy, which is very different to what I would assert majority of people define health as. Because
I think also it's like you get so used to feeling a certain way that you don't realize how good you could feel. Because I know I've given up like alcohol before, and after a few days you think, oh my god, I feel absolutely amazing, I've got so much energy, I'm sleeping really well. And it's only once you take something away that you realize that you could feel a lot better. Whereas I think once you're in a cycle of behavior, you don't realize that that's not like the optimal. You could be feeling a lot better.
Yeah, but I would speak to that with medications. I see so many people on what I call polypharmacy, 100 million drugs. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but and then they're like, it's just another drug for something else, or something has caused something else, or another drug. And before you know it, you've got these multiple drugs. And it's only when you start removing drugs that you then go, actually, I feel a lot better. Yet the purpose of the drug was to try and help you with something. So I'm definitely somebody who takes drugs away more so than puts drugs in. I now replace the drugs with food or practices like breathwork or sleep. And I ask about that in every patient. And I'm always like, why are you on this? Why are you on that? Do you need that? Does it work? Oh, well, I've been put on that and that's it. And I'm like, well, even so, you don't need to be on it forever. What can we do to look at that? It's a very common problem with pain as well, that the kind of ongoing pain relief just keep piling it up. So yeah, until you don't know what you don't know, and until you start removing things, because it's a bit like the mind as well, you've got all these coping mechanisms, and until you remove all of this rather than put more in, then you're going to get to your true self, your true balance.
I guess it's a bit like that with supplements as well, isn't it? Like you take all these supplements, but you don't actually know if you need them. Like I know I'm like one for I love a supplement, but yeah, same thing. I guess you need to take it away and see if you're deficient, and then work out if you need it or not, because otherwise,
yeah, I think sometimes you can fall into the trap of like, because supplements are deemed natural and healthy, that you end up taking all these different supplements. But again, it's about what is the supplement? What does it actually have within the supplement? Is it something that's actually what you need? And is it filled with other bits and pieces that probably your body does not really want in it? And so we can get into the same kind of issues that we have with therapeutic drugs as supplements. So I have lots of people, I'm taking this, I'm taking this, I'm taking this. Well, firstly, you don't know if you're deficient in it and if you really need it. And if you do, are you taking the right quantities, the right type, the right amount? Are you absorbing? All of those questions arise. And so people think that just by taking something off the counter and taking it means that they're healthy. Again, it's that mindset and that the culture that we live in, that we think that we're doing the right thing. But actually, if we really want to know, we need to understand our own function, our own bodies, measure it, test it, and see whether we're making a difference. So yeah, I totally resonate with the supplement side as well.
So I think because obviously this podcast is aimed at sort of employers, sort of founders, etc. What things would you like to see offered in the workplace to help support employees' mental, physical health, and also optimize their performance?
Yeah, a great question, and sometimes not easy to implement. But I would love for people to have, firstly, I'd say breaks, like real breaks away from screens, breaks away from work, time to just reconnect with themselves. I'm sure, a lot of people in the personal development, self-mastery, all these techniques of, only working for a certain period of time, time blocking and then taking a break. Because these are really important, because often what we find in the workplace, and I speak from having worked in very stressful environments, as you can imagine, that we just perpetuate the stress and we don't often realize that we are stressed because it becomes so default that we just get used to it. So we don't even know that we're in fight, flight, freeze. So to your point earlier, where you said you could be sitting down thinking you're relaxing, but actually you're still in fight, flight, freeze, because it's become so chronic within you that you can't identify it. So I would love to see employers take more time to give people the breaks, and also the facilities to be able to have that breath work or have some time out in nature and go for a walk. I mean, I think I was the only one at work from memory. I'd say to people, I'm going for a half an hour walk. Don't even come and bother me because I'm going to go. And I used to remember when I get back from the walk, I'd feel like a new person, literally a new person, to then do the afternoon. But if we're sitting at our desks eating and doing everything and then doing the afternoon load of work, you can imagine by 5 o'clock in the evening, or even later for some people, you would be absolutely shattered and you've had no rest or recuperation. And then if you're doing that constantly, week on week, month on month, year on year, there's no surprise that you go out of balance and you get disease. So I'd like to see that. I'd love to see it where you had some time to go and do some stretching or some yoga or something like that. But also the community aspect, having a place where you can connect with other people and have a conversation and have a chat that isn't necessarily about work, and having that human interaction and connection is so vital. And, we are designed to connect. We are not designed to be all on our own, in our rooms with our computers. And I think with remote working and working from home, that's becoming more of an issue. But I would love to see more of that. And then just, again, I speak from my own experiences, like, if they're providing food and things, healthy options, not always the kind of unhealthy options, just giving people the choice to have it there, rather than assuming everybody just wants the fish and chips and things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to see things like that, and really support. So if people do want to go off and do something, there's no roll of the eyes. There's none of this like, oh, we expect you to be at your desk or checking your emails and that, because we all know that people work at different paces, different, parts of the day are more productive, and just giving people the ownership and the permission to say, as long as your work is done, if you need to go and have a walk or have time out or do whatever it is that you do, then you can. I think there's too much focus, I feel, from my experience, of like bums on seats for a set amount of time. Whereas actually, if you give people the freedom to connect and have that time away, for the time that they are working, they'll probably be twice, if not 3-4 times more productive than they would be if they were just bums on seats for 8 hours a day. So, and there's lots of evidence for that as well. But
yeah, and
I would love to see.
I was going to say, and also this like 4-day week. The data that's coming out of that is showing that people, if you've got less time to do stuff, you will get it done, and 3 days to to recharge, do things that you're passionate about. Like for me, I know that going for a walk at lunchtime, it always makes me feel better for the afternoon. Like our brains take up so much energy that it's impossible to focus for sort of 8 hours. Of course it is, you need to take breaks and like recharge and everything like that. So yeah, I definitely think that's something that people should be encouraged to do, rather than, I think, depending on the workplace. Yeah, I remember back when my friends started out in insurance, even though people had finished their work, they wouldn't leave. They was like, can't be the first to leave. If you can't leave on time when you're scheduled hours. And it's like, no, it's a sign that something's wrong if you can't get your work done in a certain time. Like, not a badge of honor that you're putting in more effort.
Absolutely. And I think, and that's the thing, the brain is actually very good at it's got a lot of potential and working quite quick and, focused. But when we stretch the time and just keep it kind of we're only kind of half using the brain. So it kind of gets lazy then. And then no wonder it takes forever to do the tasks. Whereas if we actually give it its full potential for the time that we're working, and then give it its rest and relaxation, then you're actually using your brain to its full capacity then, to a degree, and you're going to get more work done. I mean, I've noticed that when I'm more focused and then go and have a break and come back, I will get much more done in the space of half an hour than I would do if I had 3-4 hours with no break. I mean, it makes sense. But it's that culture, again, to what you speak to, that is really, really important. This whole kind of, yeah, but you need to stay till 5, or no, you can't go home, or no, you need to stay longer. You've got to get this done, or, until that shifts, we're not going to see dramatic changes in the workplace. And I think we need to enable and allow people to say, I am actually done, I'm going for a break, or I've done my work, or I know that I will do that tomorrow because I'll get that done in that time. Or, allowing people to work to the function of their own body and mind, as opposed to what society thinks, that everyone should work 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's a bit like, well, there's two things. There's the, people, like some people are night owls, and like I'm very much a morning person. Also, there's like for women, it's the infradian rhythm. So like, we've got our own sort of our cycles, and we're very much not allowed to work to that. And I remember I was always saw my cycle as being like 2 weeks I'd feel good, and then, because I used to get terrible PMT, 2 weeks I'd be wiped out, exhausted. Obviously my body wasn't done. That was a sign of it. But I read this book called Flow, and it's all about our like infradian rhythm, and basically how, if you can allow yourself to work to that, can work, you're more sociable at one point, you'll kind of get stuff done in another area. And it's just a shame that we're not allowed to work with that, because it's all very much based just on the circadian rhythm. Every day is the same. And I wonder if people will, in time, start to to realize the benefits of allowing women to do that.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely great point. And, we have that nurture time where we do need to just go within ourselves and, because of our own cycles. And then there are periods where you're just on it and you're productive. And I think people are more aware of that. I mean, I currently am doing intermittent fasting in line with my cycle. Because there's a lot of information out there, and I'm not going to speak to the evidence today, but around fasting for women. But if we look at our cycles and we work it with the cycles, there are times where fasting is not ideal for a woman because they're in that nurture phase and they need everything that they need to be able to do the things that they need to do and for the cycle. And yet there are other times where fasting is much more appropriate because they're in that phase where they're a lot more productive. And yes, I think if people, that's nature, that's natural. Why work in tandem with nature, and you can't really go wrong. That's why we have seasons, and nothing happens. Nothing. The trees are fine. They go through their seasons and they're okay. And it's similar with us. We are part of nature as well. And so when we work more in sync with nature and who we really truly are innately, then there's only true potential and amazingness that can really come as a consequence. But when we're forcing people into a box of doing things one way and only one way, I think we're really losing our connection to Mother Earth in essence.
It's a bit like with the seasons, isn't it? Like we are expected to run at the same, have the same energy in the winter as the summer because of like lights and all those kind of things. Yeah. But like we have more energy in the summer and we are meant to hibernate in the winter. And like now I've actually given myself a lot more permission. I think it was like since the pandemic that in the winter, I don't really do that many social things. And if I do, it will be, I do, but it will be daytime. I want to see people for lunch and things. I don't want to go out in the evening. I want to just relax and read and like curl up. And that's what we're meant to be doing. It's when you're trying to force yourself to be like the same all the time. That's when it doesn't work. And then you just get exhausted.
Yeah. Well, that's where I come back to listen to your body, listen to your intuition, because it's all feeding back to you messages of what is required, and we just turn them off. We just don't listen, and we just get on with things. And actually, when we really connected to ourselves and listen, then everything becomes easy and free flowing and just light and quite amazing. Actually, we each are a miracle, and we don't know it.
Yeah, well, it's been so nice chatting to you. I just want to ask you one more question. So I know this can be difficult because it's more than one thing, but what is one thing that you would recommend people take a pause for in their day to improve their mental and physical health and optimize their performance?
Breathwork.
Straight in there.
Because it's easy. Well, I say it to my patients already. I said, if there's one thing you take away from me, then it's just breathe. But I mean breathe properly, breathe from the diaphragm, proper diaphragmatic breathing, because it's free, it's quick, you can do it anywhere, and it's accessible anywhere. And it's one of the easiest things. Those moments where you just think, oh, I'm stressed, or I don't know what I'm doing, or you need a pause or a break or anything. The breath will bring you back to center. 2, 3, 4 deep breaths. For some it might be more, for others it might be less. And there's lots of different types, like box breathing and prana breathing, all these different types, but find something that resonates with you, and that will be the first port of call. And then there are a million other things you can do as well, but for me, I would say breathwork. And from the people that I have treated and spoken to and clients, they always come back and go, I can't believe in 3 or 4 breaths, I just feel so much better. And I do it at the beginning of my practice. Someone comes in all fight, flight, freeze. I won't even start the consultation without 3 breaths. And they're just like, oh, I feel better already. And I've not done anything. So I would say, if there's anything that you could do as a starter, I would say breathwork.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I mean, I love doing it myself, and and it's when I teach yoga and things like that, it's the breathing that just makes you feel so much better. So I thought, well, just to finish up, is there, like, if people want to work with you, I will link to all of this in the show notes, but just let us know, like, how can people work with you if they are interested?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got, I'll share my contact details as well. I am on social media. I have a website, and I work not only face to face, I also do remote consultations as well. So I'm open for any of that. So if anyone is interested, then they can connect with me there.
Okay, great. Well, I will put it in the show notes so they can find it. But thank you so much for coming on, and it's been so interesting speaking with you. And hopefully people got some tips on how they can improve their health. And hopefully get you on again soon. I think we've got a lot more to talk about.
Oh gosh, I think we're just scratching the surface, Jenny. Thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, I've really enjoyed our conversation today.
Great, thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. You've been listening to the Pause2Perform podcast with me, Jenny Devonshire. If you enjoyed this show, I'd really appreciate it if you could rate, review and subscribe. This helps other people find it, and hopefully I can help more people to improve their mental and physical health and optimise their performance.